as we enter into the sacred space of listening and receiving, I invite you to join me in this short induction ceremony in order to be fully open, receptive, and aligned with the information that is for your highest good in this conversation today. Begin by closing your eyes and taking a deep breath into the belly. And as you're breathing, bring your awareness into your heart center, making contact with the light in your heart. And find your heart light glowing, growing and expanding out around your chest. And now bring that light of your heart up through your crown center, through the top of the head, extending up all the way above you into central sun, making contact with the heart energy of central sun. And then bring that powerful energy down through the ethers into the crown of your head, down through your body, and into your heart center, expanding and joining with the light in your heart, and continuing down to the base of your spine, extending down all the way down into the center of the earth, making contact with the heart center of Mother Earth. And now bring that nurturing energy up through the layers of the earth, carrying liquid crystal plasma through roots up into the base of your spine, and then spreading into every cell of your body, moving into the heart center, joining with the light from above and joining with the light of your heart, creating a holy trinity of light within you, and then spreading out around you, holding space for your highest good, your highest awakening, and the opening to receive the divine downloads, encodements, activations, and light codes that are perfect for you at this time. Breathe that in deeply into your belly, allowing yourself to expand in this energy and opening to step in to the container of receiving. Welcome to the Alchemy of Ascension, Season 6. We are exploring expanded states of consciousness. I'm your host, Waxéla Sananda, and today I get to introduce you to Leigh Mercree. Welcome, Amy.
Hello, Waxela. I am so excited to be here with you today.
I'm so happy to have you. And this is your first appearance on the Alchemy of Ascension. So what I love to do for people who it's their first time, I would love to, in your own words, just let you share about the amazing work that you do. You're up to a lot of cool things, including 16 books, which just blows my mind, having written one, and I've got a second on the back burner. I know what it takes, so that's amazing. But please share what your work is all about.
I will. I have been a medical intuitive for over 20 years. So what I really do is talk to people's spirit guides. The outpicturing of that has been my writing career. So my first book was The Spiritual Girl's Guide to Dating. And it was actually all about the energetics and the energy exchange in relationships, especially romantic relationships. And then each of the subsequent books kind of ends up being a love letter to my clients about things that I think that lots of people could use. So my 16th book that just is coming out now is The Healing Home, a room by room guide to positive vibes. which combines my medical intuitive work, which has, been happening for a long time, which uses elements of Taoism, traditional Chinese medicine, and a lot of my cross-cultural and specific shamanic training from my medicine teacher in that lineage. And we take that and then we mix in some Ayurvedic and Vedic philosophy that comes through in a mix of how we use that in the home. So that's kind of where I'm at now, but I'm still always seeing clients as a medical intuitive. And I have been for 20 years, and it's a lot of fun.
Okay, I love this topic and I love to dig in. A lot of people are familiar with the medical medium. I'm sure you hear him referenced a lot. So he talks about having this like constant chatter about, this is wrong with that person and here's what that person needs.
Right.
Is your gift of being a medical intuitive anything like that, or how does yours work?
I think everyone's different. I was born with the ability to do what I used to call I had atomic vision. That's what I used to call it to myself as a child. So I've always seen things on what now we would call the quantum level, so the subatomic level. So that used to show up for me as a child out in nature. I would see that with the water, on the property, the dirt, the plants, the trees. I would see that really microscopic, electron microscopic level, because it's subatomic, so smaller than an atom level of things. So I've always been able to see that. I think anybody can develop that skill. Some people are born with the skill to just pick up a guitar and start playing. I was just born seeing that. When I was a child, I thought everybody did. I sort of eventually learned they don't, but they could. So my work is about unearthing the root cause of whatever ailment or ailments somebody comes in with. And it's done through the process of talking to their spirit guides, that I'm also taken into the body and shown, one or more places what the root cause is. It could be ancestral, it could be karmic, it could be mental, emotional, physical, spiritual, it could be genetic insofar as into a gene. It could also be something really specific like the cell membrane around the nucleus of certain cells in the body is incorrectly charged, like ionized incorrectly, which means it has too few or too many electrons. And that charge is disinhibiting that cell membrane from allowing certain things to happen. And then it's causing down the line the dysfunction that we're seeing. So it's very detailed work. But I get a lot of satisfaction from digging down and really finding the root cause. It's kind of like being an energetic archaeologist. Like, you've dug something up and then you've got like all this etching and it's full of sand and you got to use a brush to clear it out. And then you finally are like, I see the text or the picture or whatever in this relic. And that's what I do in the body. So then we found the cause or causes. And then the next thing to do is to start from complete health and reverse engineer what needs to happen to take that cause and essentially to fix it. So that's what I do. And it can be, the cures are myriad, but that's basically what I do. So I don't know exactly how the medical medium works. As far as hearing things about other people, a long time ago, I had to turn that off because otherwise I'm an empath and I get very overwhelmed. That being said, sometimes I always joke, like, I talk to dead people all the time. Like, there's always spirits everywhere. And I work a lot with archangels. I work a lot with goddesses. I wrote the book, A Little Bit of Goddess, about that. Those are like go-to guides for healing, but people's deceased loved ones and ancestors are also there. So I try not to know anything about people. Also, it's nosy and it's not my business. Sometimes if I'm in a crowd, it's very loud for me. So I've learned, I was really fortunate. I had a medicine teacher who's on the other side now, but I had her in my life for a long time. She was trained in an oral tradition that was passed down from her teacher and her teacher's teacher, who was a Southwestern American Indian. So I have a great foundation about how to shield and not have the antenna wide open 24/7. Mm-hmm. every once in a while it goes awry and I have to get it back away.
Somebody
But
starts speaking up kind of loud, like,
yeah, 20
yeah.
years later, it's better. So in
Yeah.
the beginning, oh, it was a lot.
Wow.
Mhm.
So I'm curious about how it works when you said you can see, sometimes you'll see something like the nucleus of the cell,
Yeah,
isn't
yeah,
working right.
yeah,
And, like, do you have a specific remedy when you see that? Or is it, you said then you kind of reverse engineer?
yeah,
I'd love to hear more about how do you get to that
yeah.
solution, or what might, what types of solutions do you come up with
Sure,
for something, for a
sure.
situation like that?
So let's say, we're just kind of conjecturing, but let's say we're working on, in those instances of, say, like a cell nucleus that's incorrectly ionized, in my mind, I call that like, and it's an electron problem because electrons are what are involved in ionization. So when we have an electron problem, there are certain things that might fix it. So I might look at those first, particular electrolytes, certain elements of the periodic table that help electrons to behave the way I want them to, one direction or the other. But what I really do in that process of reverse engineering is I've always had, sometimes it's good, sometimes it's overwhelming, something called synesthesia.
Mm.
So it's kind of, I describe it, a lot of people have it. It's like a mixing of the senses. And for me, it shows I've honed it. Like there's times when I was younger where it would be kind of an overwhelming thing, but now I've honed it. So when I find the root cause and then I am able to see what needs to happen. So if we need to restore the charge of the cell membrane to a certain level so it can enact a certain cell function, perhaps it's giving a charge then to the mitochondria so they function correctly. And so that would be the root cause of certain mast cell disorders or certain, chronic fatigue and fibromyalgia kind of stuff. A lot of the things that have mitochondrial dysfunction. Sometimes the nucleus of the cell and its charge is a big part of it. So then I use the synesthesia, and it's like I match up. The person is specific. It's not the same for everybody. And then I match up what needs to happen from a remedy standpoint. And that will match up with a really large Rolodex in my brain, and I think elsewhere too, in some other dimension, of gradations of metallic taste and tonal information that comes in for me. This happens quickly. A lot of times I don't describe it to the client. I just find this piece of the puzzle matches this piece of the puzzle. So, for example, the kidney yin dysfunction that is causing the incorrect absorption and holding of fluids, that is causing the dehydration frequency that is causing the cell nucleus to incorrectly ionize, can be remedied by like the gears turn and then they match up marshmallow root, which is a kidney yin promoting herb. So it takes like, the brain might know these things. My brain knows a lot of it. Sometimes the things that come are funny to me and I didn't know. A lot of times though, my brain knows. But it takes, say there's 300 possibilities that could potentially help that. It could be an electrolyte, it could be this herb, it could be this herb. And instead, by matching the gradated metallic tastes and tones, then it shows what goes with that person's body, that person's situation, with this, really clear intention. And I teach shamanism, I have for 20 years. And one of the things I teach when we journey shamanically is we use the intention and the focus. So when I do a session like this, my intention and focus is to find the root cause and fix it. So because that's very strong, which is just through practice, like now I've spent 20 years practicing and taking guitar lessons, so I could be Jimi Hendrix if I started out with a propensity for it. So because of that, I can find the remedy very, pretty accurately is the feedback I get. And I will say it's not usually one remedy, it's usually a bunch of things too.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Oh, that's really interesting how your synesthesia comes in.
Yeah.
I've had experiences of that. It's not something I normally
Yeah.
have, but in heightened spiritual experiences, I've had
Yes.
synesthesia, and it's so
Yes.
like it's amazing, but it's also overwhelming
It
on a lot
can
of
be
levels
overwhelming.
because it's so much
Yeah.
information and you're like
It can be,
tasting the
it can
colors
be.
and
Yeah.
feeling,
Yeah.
like the
It can
music is
be
alive and
overwhelming. Yes, it can be overwhelming. And I always say I was born with a weird brain. I had a lot of learning disabilities growing up as a child. I still do. You know, I have a woman I see for something called neurofeedback, which helps with some of that. And she is always like, I really want you to write a book about this because she works with a lot of kids. And I was a kid with a weird brain and a ton of learning disabilities, and somehow I was guided and figured out what to do with it, to do something positive with it.
yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Sometimes those quote unquote disabilities turn into
Yeah,
these superpowers if you learn how to channel them.
exactly.
Yeah. So
Exactly.
along those lines,
Yes.
at what point did you realize medical intuitive was your thing, that you could help people that way?
I met my medicine teacher when I was 18. I took an introductory shamanism class with the Foundation for Shamanic Studies. And then I met her through someone from that class. And so I started working with clients when I was 23. So I worked with her for about 5 years and got a lot of training and cleared a lot of my stuff. Um, when I first started working when I was 23, I guess it's been 21 years now. I called it multidimensional healing, I think, because it started out there would be some of this, but I teach people how to talk to their spirit guides, and that's what I do. I talk to guides. I mean, there's more to it, but that's essentially what it is. And now it's specific guides. There's hundreds, thousands, whatever, but archangels, goddesses, things like that. So initially it was more people had life questions and things like that. Like it kind of started out with that, and there would be medical things that would be there. In the last 10 years, the medical thing has gotten to be the main thing. Um, I think people, either more of those people are finding me, or maybe people have more health problems too. Also, I think when you're suffering, when you're in pain, or your child is, sometimes it's for their kids too, you're motivated to find a solution. Whereas if you just want info, I mean, you might if it's in your path, but and if you're a spiritual seeker like our listeners, then yes, you probably will. But for the average person, you might not. So I also think as I got more exposure, um, until I don't know, until social media, everything was word of mouth for me. I never advertised. I've always been busy. Um, I mean, even now, I guess it's word of mouth, like insofar as your word of mouth to your people. So it's a different world now, but um, yeah, it evolved over time. And I think the needs of the people who were vibrationally drawn to me evolved as well.
Yeah. So
Hmm.
are you finding, as the world's changing,
Yeah.
it seems like the things that people are dealing with maybe are shifting as well,
Yes.
such as there's so much autism now, and maybe
Huge.
50 years ago there wasn't that much,
Hmm.
and things like that. What are you seeing as kind of common threads in this new time of ascension?
Really what I'm seeing is, to not sound too pessimistic, but uh, a regulatory society as far as government and things like that, that, you've heard the term like that puts profits over people. And because that's happened in the way, in the volume that it's happened in the last 10 years, let alone since the industrial age, it's really chemical and toxic exposure. There's a lot of theory that seems to be pretty accurate about, like, kind of like we have a bucket, and when our toxic load begins to overflow, people have problems. And that's happening sooner. It's happening to children. And then the other thing that's different is, and it's got a lot of pros and cons, is our connectivity factor from a electromagnetic field standpoint. We spend our time on screens, so we're disturbing our sleep. We spend our time, being inundated by Wi-Fi and fields, and you really can't avoid that anymore unless you really live in a very rural area, and even then you can't. And from a chemical standpoint, the groundwater, the forever chemicals are in the groundwater. It doesn't really matter where you go. They've been found in the blood of polar bears in the Arctic Circle. So I think that we are beginning to see the physical ramifications of this modern life, what we would call modern life. It has its pros, it has its cons. Since you have a very spiritual audience, in the fact of zooming out from this, the earth and humanity, in my opinion, my understanding, I talked with a lot of spirit guides, star beings. I mean, in some ways I'm not out there, but in a lot of ways I'm very, very out there. So your people would be on board with that, I think. Yeah. The partnership between the earth, the being whose body is the earth, the life forms on the planet, and specifically the collective of humanity, is co-creative. And there appears to be a reason from an evolutionary standpoint to me. I don't totally understand what that is, because we're here, that we're doing this. It could be a lot of things. There's people who think really pessimistic things about it from a certain standpoint, and there's also a spiritual positive way to spin it, and more. But yeah, I think the need is increasing, and at the same time, I think people are more open to spiritual things, and they're also, from a traditional Chinese medicine standpoint, people like you or I, probably you, and definitely me, who have elements of a metal element constitution. It doesn't mean it's our primary element. We have intuition, and we have sensitivity level. And so as our metal element constitutional levels expand and rise, which they're doing because people are becoming more intuitive, some of this, I believe, is also the result of the increased level of basically like electromagnetic noise, which for an HSP, a highly sensitive person, empath, whatever, like myself, that can be a challenge. It's very loud. For people who might not have had that on a constitutional level, they are becoming more metal element. Society is moving metal water. The metal people are going a little bit water. The other parts of society are getting a little bit more metal, which is intuition and sensitivity. It's also in excess rigidity and control. Autism and all of everything on the autistic continuum, which includes ADHD, many of my learning disabilities, are metal element items. There are, in some ways, there is more metal element in the constitution that creates that. If you take an autistic person or child and you put them in what's called a Faraday tent, which blocks EMFs completely, they fall asleep. People who have tinnitus, it stops. So I also think it's my little theory. There's nothing substantiating. It's just me talking to hundreds and thousands of people every year about their medical issues and my guidance from it. I think that the heightened EMF level is bringing the metal element forward in humanity. In the Taoist creative cycle, the metal element is the fourth, the fifth is water, and then water becomes wood and we start over. And I think we're having a lot of that. And we're seeing water element people are prized. They're charismatic and things like that. So when water goes out of integrity, we have like political leaders who go bananas and do a lot of bad stuff. So it's not saying it's better or worse. It's the creative cycle. I think we're moving into a more metal cycle. There are great things about metal and less great things about metal, just like every element. And there's increased metal element disorder issues, and that's a lot of what we're seeing. And there's also more intuition, more sensitivity, more empathy. And on the span of the metal element, the other thing we're seeing, At this point, the stat is 22% of humanity has what is deemed antisocial personality disorder. Nothing bad about it. No empathy. And 15 to 20%, according to Dr. Elaine Aron and her husband's research, are highly sensitive people. The nervous system and the empathy are turned up high. So we have two ends of the spectrum that are becoming more disparate. I do think that this is a function of something that Earth and humanity are co-creatively partnering to create. If it were up to me, I always tell my clients, if it were up to me, we wouldn't have suffering. You wouldn't need me. You wouldn't need to come for this medical issue. I don't know why we agreed to it, but there does seem to be this trend in my opinion.
That's interesting. I've never heard it put in elemental terms where the metal enhances the intuition and sense.
Taoist system-wise, yeah.
Yeah. But as well as, that comes with everything that comes with positive, comes with negatives, and anything out of balance is out of balance.
Yeah.
So it has to be brought back.
Yeah.
That's fascinating. And then, not to dwell on some of the things that go on, but from what I've heard, the chemtrails have, aluminum and maybe some metals in them, which could also contribute to
And
those
I mean,
issues.
and it's not even like necessarily only traditional metal. Absolutely, could be a piece of it, but it's not even traditional metals. It's more from that elemental standpoint. However, what we will say is couple of the things that are known to conduct electricity are metal and water. And that's the thing that, humanity's working with now, in my opinion, primarily. Before we were working with earth, fire, wood, in earlier stages of our development. And now we're doing metal and water, and they conduct electricity. That good side of that, intuition, influx of energy, feeling energy in the body, all of those things. And yeah, we're exposed to a lot more metal. Absolutely.
Yeah, it's interesting that you brought up the Wi-Fi too, and everything's frequency. Everything starts and ends, I think, with frequency, and we're all attempting to, in this ascension process, raise our frequency of our embodiment and our spirit. So I think the broadcasts, which we have so many of now.
We do, and it's wonderful in so many ways too. We wouldn't be on without all this.
Yeah. But sometimes I know for me, I unplug my Wi-Fi router every night.
Me too.
And if I don't, I can actually hear it. I've always been able to hear a computer, like even way back when classrooms first started having computers. I would walk in, I would be like, oh, I need like headphones or something because it's loud. And I could always tell if I walked into a room with a computer, even when that wasn't a common thing. And now, you kind of adjust, but I think it's like there's this compensation that sensitive people do to sort of tune it out.
We have to.
We aren't inundated, but then also, like it's sort of like those energetic boundaries. We, on some levels, are desensitizing, but then also like we're getting inundated on another level.
Absolutely.
So it was interesting. You brought up the Faraday cage as well. And tinnitus, I have a friend that has a whole Faraday cage for her bed.
I'd like to get one. They make
I can hook you up. It's Primal Hacker, Heidi and Thaddeus. They do a lot with that. And I have the little Faraday pouch that I got from them too for my phone.
You put your phone in.
At night I turn off my Wi-Fi router. I don't have the one for my whole bed, but I put my phone in there, and that makes me feel a little better. At least I'm not hearing it. But if I wake up, and I have a 13-year-old son, so sometimes he will either be up late playing games after I'm in
turn
bed,
it back on.
or he will just not turn it off. Sometimes he just falls asleep and forgets. He doesn't care, he really doesn't care. So I wake up and I'll hear it, and I know my dreams will even be different. Like I feel like I will dream things that I would not dream if it was off when it's on.
All of it. There's something called the JRS Eco Router. It's a router that basically, when your devices aren't asking for a signal, it stops emitting.
Hmm.
So in theory, it removes like up to 90% of what you would have been exposed to. You still should turn it off at night, but in that, it might be better for you if he leaves it on.
Yeah, that's interesting. I'll look that up. It's
Mhm.
fun
It
to
comes from,
share.
when I ordered it, it came from the Netherlands.
Oh, that's
So
cool.
it took a while,
Yeah.
but I recommend it. I like it. It feels, because I'm that sensitive like you are, it
Yeah.
feels better to me.
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
good. Okay, good to know. And then,
Mhm.
it's on during the day. I'm like doing
Well, we
lots of,
need to at least use it during the day. So
yeah,
like, if like in this case, I had interviews all day. We
yeah.
were emailing about that in between. And when I close the laptop and I don't have my phone like, powered up, so it's not reaching for Wi-Fi, hopefully it's not, um, then the signal would be a lot lower, even if I didn't go turn it off for 10 minutes.
And then you can still receive a call if one comes in or
Everything.
that's good because I do airplane
Mhm.
mode sometimes, but I have family, I have
Yeah.
kids, I have, mom in another state, and I
Yeah.
don't want to just turn it off.
On my phone, I turn off the Wi-Fi, I turn off the Bluetooth. I have unlimited data,
Yeah.
so that's why.
Yeah.
So that's going to only be cellular, and that's always going to be reaching out for the signal. But like, if you have I have an iPad that I use as tablet, we have the laptop. Like, if I close the laptop and I'm not using the iPad, then there's nothing in my house that's on that network that's saying, give us a signal, give us a signal. So it'll be less.
Yeah, that's
So
great.
you
Okay,
might like
good
that.
to know. Yeah,
Yeah.
and interestingly too, like I feel like the kids, so my son's a gamer. It says so many,
They
13-year-old
all
year old
are.
boy, so
They
many
all
of them
are.
are. And I've talked to him about this stuff. I think this is
Yeah.
relevant about, I'm like, I want him to put a sticker or organite or whatever on his phone,
Yeah,
protection
yeah.
stuff. And he just straight up said to me, Mom, my phone is not hurting me and my computer is not hurting me. And I'm like,
Wow.
got it. He's chosen that.
He's
He
chosen that.
he's
And so it
really
is. Yes.
strong and clear. He's not buying it and he's
Yeah.
not having it. And I'm like, wow, way to claim your reality, buddy. I respect that,
I know. I know.
And so,
That's the
I
right
think
idea.
for anyone that's listening, that's like, oh, but I can't shut it off at night. I'm in an apartment or whatever. You can, I feel like intention and
Yeah.
really setting your mind to
Yeah.
something always can override the rest of what's going on in the world.
It can help. It can help for sure. I think for that to be 100%, your conscious, your subconscious, every aspect of you has to have 100% belief in it. To get to that point, it'd be a challenge, but more the better. Like, at least some is better. Absolutely. What we tell ourselves, they listen to. That's why when we post affirmations on the bathroom mirror, we will read them every day. I mean, so that's a really good point. They do have, I have my eye on an EMF blocking canopy at the moment.
Cool. Yeah.
So they do have those if people live in populated areas too.
Yeah. Yeah.
For the bed.
Awesome.
Mhm.
I want to talk about the guides a little bit, the
Yeah.
spirit guides, how you tune in to the guides. And, this is all about expanded states of
Yes.
consciousness, which I feel like everything that you do, most people would consider an expanded state. I also get for you, it's
I
like
was
what you
born in
do
one.
anyway.
I was born in an expanded state. Oh my gosh. It's
But
been my journey's been getting
so
grounded.
what's that?
I said I was born in an expanded state. My journey's
Yeah.
been getting grounded.
Yeah, yeah, right. But for a lot of
Yeah,
people, they really crave and desire that
they
ability
do.
to be able to connect, to be able to speak with
Yes,
their guides, to even
yes,
know that what they're receiving is like to be able to trust it. So,
absolutely.
are there some ways or like techniques or some advice you could give to people who are looking for
Yes.
expanding their ability to do that?
A lot. I teach a class called Meet Your Guides, where I teach you how to talk to your guides. And I know people have certain I don't know if I want to call it like preconceptions about shamanism, and that's okay. But there are a few ways to talk to your guides. That's what I teach in Meet Your Guides. And these are standardized, repeatable ways to do that. And you learn, and part of it is shamanic. I also have my membership Intuitive You, where we give the tools, and they're a little bit more accessible. You know, they're lighter, easier than like a full course. And I teach channeling, and I channel too, which, you know, I don't always go as public about that. Your group would be into that though. So, you know, I talk to guides, and the everybody can absolutely do that. Obviously I've honed the scale for a long time, so it's, you know, my intention is to be the clearest channel possible, especially because I'm, you know, looking at things in people's bodies and giving them information. And I always really strive to like give the most quantity and quality of information possible in the time allotted. But my ultimate goal is to teach you guys to do all of this for yourself, so you don't need me anymore. And I think that that's completely possible. I think the human brain, body, being, spirit is 100% capable of doing that. It's a skill. Now, that being said, you know, when we are in a state of mind chatter, anxiety, whatever you want to call it, we are less likely, if we're working on beginning that skill, to be able to hear that. So one of the things that I recommend to bring us really deeply into a parasympathetic state and to open to hearing the guides, they're always here. Everyone has spirit guides. They're your ancestors, they're angels, whatever. There's infinite trillions of non-physical beings. Many of them are just waiting to help you. They're helping you. They can't overstep your free will. So first of all, just ask, even if you don't know who they are, just say, can my high vibrational guides help me with everything, including XYZ? And then to get into a state where you're in a state of receptivity to be open to sensing them, I recommend Yoga Nidra, which is also known as yogic sleep. I really should make some audios and videos of it, because I have a way I do it with people when I lead workshops. It's a little bit different than the general, but you can find it on YouTube and stuff like that. So if you use Yoga Nidra to get into a deepened state of relaxation, parasympathetic level relaxation, and unwinding some of the tension that happens in, I actually see it as tension in the nervous system, in the neurons, which are part of these fibers that are in the nervous system, and then the neurons in the brain. So when we calm that, then we open to a receptive state. That is one way that we can begin to sense, hear, feel whatever our intuitive proclivities are to feel our guides. Then when we add in elements of shamanism, which is a more active method of talking to spirit guides, then you add in a standardized, repeatable process by which you can do that. So that's like a nutshell of what I recommend. So as far as takeaways for our people, do some yoga nidra, and then lay in a receptive state and talk to your spirit guides and ask for, you know, if there's a guide with whom you resonate, a certain goddess, archangel, ascended master, planetary healer, whatever, that you know is a high vibrational being, because you have, you know, enough knowledge or experience about that. Invite them to come and be with you. If you are laying down, you know, imagine like you would put your hands out as if you were sitting, you know, with your hands out, but you can just do it like horizontally, because they can be however. And ask that guide to hover their hands, their spirit hands, like palms, over yours, and begin to feel the connection, you know, with that goddess, whomever. And you can say the word yes to like affirm it and let it strengthen. You can say, you know, thank you, and introduce yourself, and then allow yourself in that receptive state to see if anything, notice, you know, if it's brand new to you too, like notice, is it emotions, is it feelings, is it knowings, is it colors, is it sounds, is it smells, is it, you know, images, whatever. And just begin to notice and receive, and then ask for a message, ask for healing, ask for guidance, and always say thank you. And that's a way you can start doing it on your own today.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. So asking, number one, very
Asking,
important.
gotta ask,
Being
and always say
open
thank you.
and always say thank you. I love
Yeah.
that too. And then just the being open to like, and I think this is where people get tripped up a lot, where they think it's going to show up in a certain way, or they're going to see it, or they're
Yeah.
going to hear it, or, you know, and there's so many different ways that those types
And
of things can
they
come.
might,
Yeah.
but yeah,
Might not.
they
It might
might.
not be that way,
Yeah.
and it might, right.
And sometimes things open. It's interesting because, you know, like I said, I've taught shamanism for 20 years, and I've had people who sometimes, not right now, but at times I run, there's a lot of classes, but then eventually they graduate to the expert advanced level where they can like take all these high, I don't know, really out there classes when I get guided. And so I have people who sometimes have like a set thing. Like I can think of this one wonderful woman who it was, you know, her journeys would be a lot of color and light, and she'd get a lot of info through that, and there would be a lot more like knowings and stuff. And after a year, something shifted and it went visual. It opened up, and that's the practice. You know, this analogy I used to use when I started teaching shamanism 20 years ago. It fit. I feel like in today's world it's so obsolete, but the analogy of like if you had a rock that you could roll a pebble back and forth in the same path over and over and over, eventually you would wear a groove.
Mhm.
And that's the process of journeying into ultimate reality from a shamanic perspective. And you know, every journey will be completely different, et cetera, et cetera. Everybody's different, but she had worn that groove and it clicked, and it opened up to a full visual, like a lucid dream.
Nice.
So
Yeah.
sometimes everyone's really different. And what my sort of thesis statement with that is, don't get locked into thinking that your intuitive perceptions are always going to be the same. Your abilities may grow and change, and most people they do,
Yeah.
especially if
Yeah.
you put a little attention on it.
Absolutely. I love
Mm-hmm.
that. Yeah. Creating pathways all the time.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
All right. Well, Amy, this has been lovely getting to
It's
know
been
you
so
and
fun.
understand what you're about and your work. Thank you so much for
Mm-hmm.
taking time out to share with us.
Thank you so much for having me on. It was such a joy. I'm so glad you're bringing so much light into the world.
Yeah, my pleasure. Same to you. You're really helping a lot of people and I appreciate that so
Thank you.
much. And to everyone watching or listening, thank you so much for tuning in. Have a beautiful day or evening. We'll see you on the next session. Namaste.